Sarah Ferguson was once the most photographed woman in Britain. But when she appeared at Wimbledon in June 2025, people barely recognized her. 2 cancer diagnoses in 7 months, a royal title stripped away, and a forced exit from the home she lived in for 22 years. The tabloids called her transformation shocking. But what really happened behind closed doors? And why are insiders whispering about a desperate plan to reinvent herself before the world sees her again? The story goes deeper than anyone expected. Sarah Margaret Ferguson came into the world on October 15, 1959, at Welbeck Hospital in London. And from the very beginning, her life was wrapped in privilege that felt almost ordinary to her. She was the second daughter of Major Ronald Ferguson and Susan Wright, and her father's job managing Prince Charles's polo team placed the family right inside royal life without actually being royal. Their home, Dummerdown House in Hampshire, was large and open and full of horses, and before Sarah was even aware of how unusual it all was, she was already riding by age 4. Horses became part of her daily rhythm. She did not just ride for fun. She trained, competed, and pushed herself hard. By the time she was 10, she had already won multiple cups at local and national events, and people around her began to notice how fearless she was in the saddle. Her confidence spilled out everywhere. At polo matches, she laughed loudly, talked easily, and mixed with adults as if she belonged there, which she did in her own way. Those polo fields were also where she met Prince Andrew for the first time. They were children then, playing during breaks while their parents watched the matches. It felt casual and natural, and that early familiarity would matter later. Growing up at Dummerdown House meant her days were built around discipline and competition. She often rode up to 5 horses before breakfast, pushed by a father who believed excellence was non-negotiable. By age 12, she had won the Hampshire Junior Horse Show. At 13, she placed second in the National Junior Eventing Championships. Falling off a horse never scared her. Even after a bad spill, she climbed back on without hesitation. The estate itself was surrounded by people just like them: polo managers, aristocrats, and families tied to royal sport. Summers were spent at Windsor and Guards Polo Club, watching the highest levels of the game and learning how to move confidently in elite spaces without ever being taught that lesson out loud. Major Ronald Ferguson's role meant Sarah had access that few non-royals ever experienced. She attended matches at Windsor, Smith's Lawn, and Guards Polo Club, often close enough to the royal box to feel part of it. She was known as a child who could walk up to the Queen and say hello without being stopped. By age 8, people already recognized her face and her bold personality at polo events. She rode ponies alongside Prince Andrew and his siblings, and that sense of belonging settled into her quietly. It felt permanent. Then it vanished. In 1974, when Sarah was just 13, her parents' marriage collapsed. The divorce cut her life cleanly in 2. A year later, in 1975, her mother married Argentine polo player Hector Barrantes and moved nearly 7,000 miles away to Trenquelauquen, Argentina. Sarah and her older sister Jane stayed behind in England. The separation hit hard and deep. Sarah later called it the worst moment of her life. She felt abandoned, confused, and somehow responsible. Her mother's new life on a remote ranch was far removed from the Hampshire countryside, and Sarah rarely saw her again. She visited once in 1980, but the distance never closed. She later said she never felt like a real family again, and the loneliness followed her quietly into adulthood. After the divorce, Sarah's path shifted. She stayed with her father and sister and tried to move forward, but school did not go well. At 16, she left Hurst Lodge School with only 2 O-levels, spoken English with an A, and art with a C. She failed several other subjects, including English language and literature. Higher education was not encouraged. Instead, she was sent to Queen's Secretarial College in London, a finishing school designed to prepare girls for marriage rather than careers. She learned shorthand, typing, and bookkeeping. There was no talk of ambition or leadership. Sarah later joked that she learned how to answer phones and make tea, not how to run a business. After graduating, she worked as a cleaner and waitress, then found jobs in public relations and publishing. The lack of formal education stayed with her, even as she later became a best-selling author of children's books and novels. Her life was already proving to be anything but conventional. Everything shifted again in 1985 when Princess Diana invited Sarah to join a tour of Prince Andrew's ship, HMS Brazen. The childhood connection was suddenly back in focus. Diana saw something between them and pushed it forward. The chemistry was immediate and impossible to miss. Within weeks, Sarah and Andrew were seen together at Ascot and other royal events. By the end of the year, they were inseparable. Andrew told friends he was completely taken with her, and the press moved quickly, sensing another royal love story forming in real time. On February 19, 1986, Prince Andrew proposed on his 26th birthday after just 5 months of dating. What stunned the palace was not just the speed, but the fact that he had not asked Queen Elizabeth II for permission beforehand. Protocol was broken, and anger followed behind closed doors. The ring itself became part of the story. Andrew designed it with a 3-carat Burmese ruby, surrounded by 10 diamonds, chosen specifically to match Sarah's red hair. Valued at $70,000, it symbolized how different this romance already was. When the engagement was publicly announced on March 19, 1986, the media exploded. Sarah's warmth and energy made her instantly popular. Newspapers called her a breath of fresh air. Her openness contrasted sharply with Diana's reserved image, and the public embraced it, even as palace insiders worried her personality might be too much. The wedding on July 23, 1986, turned Sarah into a global figure overnight. She married Prince Andrew at Westminster Abbey in front of an estimated 500,000 viewers worldwide. The guest list included Queen Elizabeth II, Margaret Thatcher, and Nancy Reagan. There were 2,000 guests inside the Abbey. Prince William, just 4 years old, served as a page boy, wearing a sailor outfit in honor of Andrew's naval career. Bridesmaids wore peach dresses, and the spectacle captured the decade perfectly. Sarah became Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of York, gained apartments at Buckingham Palace, and moved into Sunninghill Park, a large country home later mocked as South York. The attention was relentless, and not always kind. Motherhood arrived quickly. Princess Beatrice was born at 8:18 p.m. on August 8, 1988, at Portland Hospital in London. Sarah's pregnancy was difficult, marked by high blood pressure and severe water retention. Andrew's naval career kept him away for long stretches. Reports later said he was absent for about 40 weeks during their first year of marriage alone. Just weeks after giving birth, Sarah joined Andrew on an official visit to Australia, leaving Beatrice behind and drawing sharp criticism. Princess Eugenie followed on March 23, 1990, born at 7:58 p.m. by cesarean section at the same hospital. By then, the marriage was already strained. Andrew's deployments left Sarah alone at royal residences, raising 2 children under constant media attention. Between 1988 and 1991, Andrew served as a helicopter pilot on HMS Brazen and later as flight commander on HMS Campbelltown, including a 6-month Far East mission and NATO service in the North Atlantic. Sarah coped in her own way. She went out, skied, danced, and lived loudly, which the tabloids labeled un royale. At the same time, her mother's second husband died of cancer in 1990, reopening old wounds of abandonment and loss. the emotional weight grew heavier. The press became cruel. During her pregnancies, Sarah's weight reached about 15 stone 10 pounds, roughly 220 livres. Newspapers mocked her mercilessly, calling her Duchess of Pork and Fat Fergie. Side-by-side photos compared her body to Diana's slimmer figure. The damage was lasting. Crash diets and binge-eating cycles followed her for decades. Then came August 1992. Photos surfaced of Sarah sunbathing topless in Saint-Tropez, while her financial advisor, John Bryan, kissed her toes. The Daily Mirror published more than 10 pages of images on August 20, 1992. The scandal erupted just months after Sarah and Andrew had announced their separation on March 19, 1992, exactly 6 years after their engagement. The villa had been chosen for privacy, a 7-acre property meant to protect her daughters, who were just 4 and 2 years old. It did not matter. Telephoto lenses captured everything. The fallout was immediate and brutal. The Queen was furious. Prince Philip was deeply embarrassed. Princess Margaret wrote that Sarah had brought more shame on the family than could be imagined. Sarah was pushed out of royal life and barred from many events. She later sued Paris Match, originally seeking $1.32 million. The court awarded $84,000. The money changed nothing. Her reputation was shattered, and the road back was long and painful. What began with privilege and confidence ended in exile, leaving Sarah Ferguson to rebuild herself far from the world that once felt like home. By May 30, 1996, Sarah Ferguson's marriage to Prince Andrew was officially over, but the noise around it had already worn her down. Years of tabloid ridicule followed her into the settlement, and what came out the other side shocked many people. She lost the style of Her Royal Highness and kept the title Duchess of York. Yet the money attached to the divorce was far smaller than anyone expected. While Princess Diana received $17,000, Sarah was given a $350,000 lump sum, an annual allowance of $15,000, $500,000 from the Queen to help buy a house, and $400,000 placed into a trust for her daughters. Andrew agreed to cover private school and university fees, but beyond that, the safety net was thin. The press still painted her as rich, but the numbers told a different story. The income could not support the life she had been living, and she knew it. She later admitted that she had to work immediately to survive, often joking in interviews that she was broke, a comment that stunned the public because of where she had come from. As the divorce settled in, reality moved fast. Legal bills piled up, royal support disappeared, and Sarah had to rely on herself. She leaned back on something she had created years earlier, the Budgie the Little Helicopter children's books, which began in 1987 and became a television cartoon by 1994. The character was popular and visible, yet the money was far smaller than headlines suggested. Newspapers claimed she would earn $400,000 over 5 years, with $3,000 a year going directly to her, but her representatives denied it. Most of the revenue went to production costs and charity, especially her Chances for Children Foundation. What remained barely covered her growing expenses. By 1996, the gap between income and lifestyle had widened, pushing her toward commercial deals she once would have avoided. That was when Weight Watchers stepped in and became her main source of cash. Even then, she spoke openly about having to work for a living, a sharp turn from palace life. Then tragedy struck from another direction. On September 19, 1998, her mother, Susan Barrantes, was killed in a violent car crash in Argentina. Susan was 61 and driving a Rover 400 across the Pampas near Tres Lomas, about 310 miles southwest of Buenos Aires, close to the ranch where she raised polo ponies. The car collided head-on with a Renault catering van. She was not wearing a seatbelt and was killed instantly. Her nephew Rafael Barrantes was in the car and survived with minor injuries. The wreckage was left scattered across the road. The loss hit Sarah hard, especially because it came just 13 months after Princess Diana's fatal crash, also tied to not wearing a seatbelt. In less than a year, Sarah had lost the two women she relied on most. She canceled her Weight Watchers tour, rushed back from Italy, and traveled to Argentina for the funeral, while her daughters stayed with their father and the Queen at Balmoral. Even before her mother's death, Sarah was already leaning heavily on her Weight Watchers contract. Signed in 1996, it reportedly paid around $1,900,000 and made her the public face of the brand in both the United States and the United Kingdom. She toured constantly, appeared in advertisements, and spoke openly about her struggles with weight. The company presented her as relatable, not perfect, and for a while it worked. But by 1999, her weight fluctuated again. The publicity turned sour, and the partnership quietly ended. The income stopped, and the debts remained. The deal that was meant to stabilize her life instead became another chapter that closed too soon. She kept trying. In the early 2000s, she partnered with Wedgwood to launch a line of royal-themed china and homeware. Her name and image were meant to attract loyal royal fans, but sales were weak from the start. The collection failed to gain traction, the contract expired, and another revenue stream disappeared just when she needed it most. Each failure made the next risk feel necessary. By 2006, she placed her hopes into a new company called Hartmore LLC in the United States. She poured everything into it, including earnings from her work on The Young Victoria and her book royalties. She imagined a global lifestyle and wellness brand, but the costs were high and the profits almost non-existent. By 2009, Hartmore collapsed, leaving her with debts of about $650,000, roughly $889,000. Friends urged her to declare bankruptcy. She refused. Instead, she kept searching for another way out, even as the embarrassment followed her. That same year, the full picture came into view. By 2009, her total debts had climbed to around $5,000. Creditors dragged her into the high court over unpaid bills, staff wages, and luxury expenses she could no longer sustain. Lawsuits stacked up, and the press watched closely as her life drifted further from anything royal. Desperation crept into her decisions, pushing her toward people and deals that carried serious risks. In May 2010, everything exploded. An undercover operation by a British tabloid secretly filmed Sarah negotiating to sell access to Prince Andrew for $500,000, about $718,500 at the time. Meetings took place at a London restaurant and a New York hotel. On tape, she spoke openly about how money could open doors and accepted a $27,600 down payment, roughly $40,000, which she took in a bag. The footage sparked a global media storm. She issued a public apology, saying desperation and alcohol had clouded her judgment, and insisted Andrew knew nothing about it. Still, the damage was immediate. Book deals vanished. Television contracts collapsed. Charities cut ties. Her reputation took a hit it would never fully recover from. Soon after, another uncomfortable truth surfaced. In 2010, Jeffrey Epstein paid $15,000, about $2,200, toward Sarah's debts, settling part of what she owed her former assistant. She later admitted accepting the money was a massive mistake, and said she intended to repay it. What emerged later was far deeper. Documents and emails showed Epstein had quietly supported her financially for 15 years. There were requests for more money, including one message from January 16, 2010, asking for $50,000 to $100,000 to cover bills that were piling up. At first, he helped. Eventually, sources said he grew frustrated and cut her off. The relationship, once minimized, turned out to be long and complicated. The fallout lingered. After the sting and the financial revelations, Sarah apologized publicly again in March 2011, expressing deep regret and condemning abuse in all forms. Yet private messages told a different story, showing warmth and gratitude toward Epstein even after her statements. The contradictions followed her, damaging not only her own standing, but also adding pressure to Prince Andrew and the wider royal family. What remained was a long shadow of debt, regret, and consequences that never fully faded. A reminder of how quickly everything can unravel when survival pushes people too far. In June 2011, Sarah Ferguson stepped into the spotlight again with a reality series called Finding Sarah, and the world watched her try to rebuild a life that kept slipping through her hands. The show aired on Oprah Winfrey Network and followed her across 6 episodes as she pushed herself through a 26-mile hike in Canada's Arctic. Cameras caught her breathing hard in the cold air, caught her crying during therapy sessions, caught her sitting across from Dr. Phil and Suze Orman while they asked questions she did not want to answer. People expected inspiration, but many critics felt she sounded distant from real struggle. They said her regrets about wasted wealth did not land the way she hoped. Ratings dropped week after week, and the show that was supposed to save her image only chipped it further. She produced the series herself, hoping it would become a doorway back into public favor. But instead, it left her feeling exposed and more misunderstood than before. During these years, she kept writing. She released children's stories like the Little Red books from 2003 to 2009 and the Helping Hand books in 2010. For a moment, it looked like she had found a new path. Then, in 2012, she sold the TV and merchandising rights for her books to Handmade Films, pulling in a large sum that arrived right when she needed help the most. Her American firm, Hart Moore, had collapsed with debts near $600,000, and her projects kept falling apart before they could grow into something steady. She had helped produce The Young Victoria in 2009, which earned loud praise from critics, but even that success did not turn into lasting security. Each time she tried to build a foundation, something shifted under her feet, leaving her with temporary relief instead of long-term stability. Her media appearances continued long after that. She published memoirs, sat for interviews, and tried to reclaim control over her life story. Yet something always backfired. Every new revelation drove a deeper wedge between her and the royal family. Palace staff whispered about the risk of her going too far on television, afraid she might reveal something they did not want the public to hear. After the Epstein scandal exploded, everything worsened. Old mistakes resurfaced, including her admission that she had accepted money from him years earlier. Her ties to the monarchy weakened until they finally snapped. She and Andrew eventually lost their remaining royal privileges and were pushed out of Royal Lodge. Her daughters were pulled into the fallout, and she felt the weight of it every day. Even the most lucrative interview offers could not repair the damage or revive her public appeal. Then, in June 2023, life shifted again in a way she never expected. During a routine mammogram at King Edward VII Hospital, doctors found early-stage breast cancer. She felt healthy at the time, which made the news more frightening. She learned that early detection changes the odds completely. Almost every woman diagnosed at the earliest stage survives 5 years or more, compared with only about 30% when the cancer is found late. She underwent a single mastectomy and reconstruction in a surgery that stretched close to 8 hours. Right before the operation, she spoke about it on her podcast, urging listeners to never skip a screening. Later, she lightened the heaviness by naming her reconstructed breast Derek, saying he helped save her life. Behind the humor was a quiet understanding that everything could have gone differently if she had ignored that appointment. While surgeons worked on her reconstruction, they removed several moles as a precaution. One of them came back positive for malignant melanoma. It was a shock that felt doubly cruel. Melanoma spreads fast if ignored, but they had caught it early because the doctors were being thorough. She stayed calm, grateful that the danger was found before it could grow. She began talking openly about skin checks and how even a small mole can hide something serious. Her willingness to speak made people listen because the fear in her words was real. In January 2024, the second cancer diagnosis was confirmed as melanoma, meaning she was now fighting 2 separate cancers within 7 months. She said it felt like a bomb dropped into her life, then another one right after. There were days when she carried herself with strength for her daughters, and days when she felt the shadow of it following her everywhere. Still, she kept moving. By early 2025, she told people she was recovering and in good health, though anyone who saw her noticed the physical changes. Treatment had reshaped her body and thinned her frame, but her voice stayed steady when she talked about survival. Her own journey turned her into a loud advocate for screening. She told people she had managed to place cancer in a corner rather than letting it control her. In October 2024, she became the patron of Prevent Breast Cancer, stepping onto stages at galas and speaking from her own experience. Her message was simple: go to your appointments. Know your body. Do not wait. Her honesty reached people who needed to hear it, and for once her public presence felt helpful instead of divisive. Her recovery through 2024 and 2025 brought visible changes: weight loss, new contours from surgery, hair that looked different from the woman she once presented to the world. But she talked about feeling stronger inside and grateful for the family and medical teams who stood with her. The transformation marked a hard chapter, but it also became proof of how deeply she wanted to live. By October 2025, everything around her shifted again when King Charles stripped both her and Prince Andrew of their remaining titles. She lost the ability to call herself Duchess of York for the first time since 1986, and something about that loss cut deeper than she expected. Her title had been her introduction in every room she stepped into. It opened doors and cushioned her falls. Losing it left her exposed and forced charities to cut ties with her. A renewed wave of attention surrounded Andrew's past and Epstein's network, especially after Virginia Giuffre's posthumous memoir. Sarah felt the consequences even though she was no longer married to Andrew. Without her title, the last piece of her royal identity disappeared. Just a few months later, on January 25, 2026, she and Andrew were ordered to leave Royal Lodge, the 30-room home they had shared for 22 years. It was the place where they raised their daughters and the only stable space she had known for a long time. She packed her belongings while royal staff whispered that it was time to create distance from Andrew's scandals. Andrew was offered a smaller subsidized home at Marsh Farm in Sandringham, but Sarah did not have that option. Rumors spread that she was selling valuables to stay afloat. It was the first time since her marriage that she faced housing without royal support. Walking away from the lodge felt like watching her old life disappear behind a locked gate. In August 2025, she had already sold her Belgravia townhouse for $425 million, taking a $400,000 loss, even though she had bought it only 3 years earlier. Officially, it was an investment sale for her daughters, but people close to her admitted she needed the money. She was losing partnerships, charities were distancing themselves, and she needed around $5 million to maintain the lifestyle she once enjoyed. Parting with the townhouse meant parting with one more piece of security. By December 2025, she was said to be planning a full cosmetic surgery makeover. Reports claimed she wanted a face and neck lift, liposuction, and a breast lift. She wanted a fresh look for the new year, but she could not afford any of it. Rumors floated that she was hoping to find someone wealthy to help cover the costs. It sounded desperate, because it was. Reinvention had become her lifeline, and she grasped at anything that felt like a path forward. In January 2026, she slipped into silence. For someone who had loved interviews and cameras for decades, her disappearance from public view felt strange. Royal watchers said she was saving her words for something bigger. Maybe a memoir. Maybe a transformation that would surprise everyone. She kept to herself as whispers grew about a comeback. It was the quiet before whatever she planned next. Then came a moment in June 2025 that showed how different everything had become. She attended Wimbledon for the first time in 37 years, sitting beside Princess Beatrice in the royal box. She wore a green floral maxi dress and smiled for the cameras. But people noticed the changes in her face and her weight. They saw the signs of treatment and the exhaustion that clung to her. Yet she carried herself with grace, leaning gently toward her daughter, as if drawing strength from simply being there. It was a rare outing during a storm of personal and financial troubles, and it showed both her resilience and the toll of everything she had lived through.